This introduction to the PowerPoints and videos on the historical and present-day application of Daniel and Revelation shows parallels between 1844 to today. The similarities between the events preceding and following the historical movement of 1844 and the present-day events are so incredible they cannot be ignored. One of the most solemn and yet most glorious truths revealed in the Bible is that of Christ's second coming to complete the great work of redemption. To God's pilgrim people, so long left to sojourn in the region and shadow of death, a precious, joy-inspiring hope is given in the promise of His appearing, who is the resurrection and the life, to bring home again is banished. The doctrine of the second advent is the very keynote of the sacred scriptures. From the day when the first pair turned their sorrowing steps from Eden, the children of faith have waited the coming of the promised one to break the destroyer's power and bring them again to the lost paradise. Holy men of old look forward to the advent of the Messiah in glory as the consummation of their hope. And this is taken from the book The Great Controversy, page 299. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth His handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Prophecy not only foretells the manner and object of Christ's coming, but presents tokens by which men are to know when it is near. In Luke chapter 21, verse 25, Jesus said, "There shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars." In Mark chapter 13, verse 24 to 26, we read, "The sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory." The Revelator in chapter 6, verse 12, thus describes the first of the signs to precede the second advent. "There was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood." The first event that was recorded having to do with the signs that were promised by the Lord that we should watch for is the 1755 Lisbon earthquake and tsunami. We're told in the Great Controversy, page 304-305, that these signs were witnessed before the opening of the 19th century. In fulfillment of this prophecy, there occurred in the year 1755 the most terrible earthquake that has ever been recorded. Though commonly known as the earthquake of Lisbon, it extended to the greater part of Europe, Africa, and America. It was felt in Greenland, in the West Indies, in the island of Madeira, in Norway and Sweden, Great Britain and Ireland. It pervaded an extent of no less than 4 million square miles. In Africa, the shock was almost as severe as in Europe. A great part of Algiers was destroyed, and a short distance from Morocco, a village containing 8 or 10,000 inhabitants was swallowed up. A vast wave swept over the coast of Spain and Africa, engulfing cities and causing great destruction. 90,000 persons are supposed to have been lost on that fatal day. Here are additional data on the 1755 Lisbon earthquake and tsunami, which marks the first of the events studied in the precedent slide. The 1755 Lisbon's earthquake, also known as the Great Lisbon Earthquake, occurred in the Kingdom of Portugal on Saturday, November 1st, the Holy Day of All Saints' Day, at around 9:40 a.m. local time. In combination with subsequent fires and tsunami, the earthquake almost totally destroyed Lisbon and adjoining areas. Seismologists today estimate the Lisbon earthquake had a magnitude in the range of 8.5 to 9.0 on the moment magnitude scale, with its epicenter in the Atlantic Ocean about 200 kilometers or 120 miles west-southwest of Cape St. Vincent. Estimates place the death toll in Lisbon alone between 10,000 and 100,000 people, making it one of the deadliest earthquakes in history. Shock from the earthquake were felt throughout Europe as far as Finland and North Africa, and according to some sources, even in Greenland and the Caribbean. Tsunamis as tall as 20 meters or 66 feet swept the coast of North Africa and struck Martinique and Barbados across the Atlantic. A 3-meter or 10-foot tsunami hit Cornwall on the southern English coast. Galway on the west coast of Ireland was also hit, resulting in partial destruction of the Spanish Arch section of the city wall. At Kinsale, several vessels were whirled around in the harbor and water poured into the marketplace. As the first earthquake studied scientifically for its effects over a large area, it led to the birth of modern seismology and earthquake engineering. Although many catastrophic natural events have occurred since 1755, we would do well to look at this chart here presenting data of events that seems to be coming closer together than ever before. We're talking about earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, volcanoes, nuclear disasters, and the death tolls of these events. In 1986, Chernobyl in the Ukraine, we have a nuclear disaster that has caused more than 200,000 deaths so far. In 2004, in the Indian Ocean, there was a terrible earthquake of 9.1 magnitude and a tsunami that followed and caused the death of over 230 to 280,000 people. In 2005, in New Orleans, United States, the Hurricane Katrina has brought a lot of disaster as far as economy, as far as destruction, and killed over 1,800 people. In 2010 in Chile, with an earthquake of 8.8 magnitude causing a tsunami, and again a very, very expensive event, and 525 deaths. In Haiti, in 2010 of the same year, another earthquake of 7.0 magnitude and tsunami has caused the death of 200,000 people and more. In 2010, Mount Merapi in Indonesia, the volcano that caused 353 deaths, and we know now at this time as we're looking at this data that Mount Bali is also in eruption. In 2010, the same year, the Mount Jökull in Iceland has also, as a volcano, caused a lot of damage, especially to the airlines, because of the ashes the airline could not fly for a number of weeks. In 2011, Japan faced an earthquake of a magnitude of 9.0 with a large tsunami. Due also to this tsunami and earthquake, a nuclear disaster occurred at Fukushima, and over 16,000 people died in that catastrophe. In 2012 to 2017, we can count so many hurricanes, of Sandy to Harvey to Irma to Maria, and also included in India and China, which has brought the death toll to over 10,000 and many, many billions of dollars in breaking of the economy, actually. And even Puerto Rico and all these islands have suffered tremendously and are still suffering because of those terrible hurricanes. So follow up with those links here presented. Those links are showing the cost and even the volcanic eruption in the 21st centuries, which we believe are not just what we have seen before. And it is not fair to say that it has always happened. Especially the magnitude of the earthquake now, it seems that it has gone on the increase, and basically we should be wondering what is happening on the earth. That is evident. Let's look now at the parallels between the events around 1844 and today. The events are numbered on the left columns, and then we will be comparing 1844 with today. The first of these events, as mentioned earlier, is the 1755 Lisbon earthquake and tsunami. Today, we have actually witnessed to the nuclear energy accident of Chernobyl in 1986, followed by the terrible earthquake and tsunami of 2004 of the Indian Ocean, the 2011 nuclear energy accident of Japan and Fukushima, and now we are facing more and more earthquake and hurricanes and volcano as we hear about even to this day. The second event, which has no parallel yet today, is the Dark Day of 1780. And this is reported, my friend, in the book The Great Controversy, but you can also check it in history. Could it be that a dark day could be very well produced by a volcano? We are told that, for example, Yellowstone in the United States, if ever this volcano erupted, it could create so much ashes and so much acid and carbon dioxide in the air that the people would be suffering so much, and there will be so much dark days because the sun would be taken away from us in a way, and it would be very dark. It is still to be seen. The third event is the fallen stars, which occurred in 1833. Today, we have no precedent of the fallen stars like they saw in the United States in 1833. For those of you who wonder who are the fallen stars, what are the fallen stars? The fallen stars are created by comets and asteroids. They are not actually stars falling in the sky. They are pieces of comets and asteroids, and as they enter our atmosphere, they burn, and they are called meteors. And if some pieces of those meteors are basically solidified and come onto the earth, either large or small, they're called meteorites. So these are called fallen stars because depending where those pieces are detached from those meteor like we see on the earth, but they come from, as I said, the comets. It depends on which region in the sky they come from. And as we know, astronomy has divided the sky with 88 constellations, and those 88 constellations are basically the map of the sky for the astronomers. And so if a fallen stars, which is produced by a comet, in the area of Leo, for example, it becomes Leonids, And it's not necessarily that it's the stars. As I said, it comes from a comet that just appeared to be in that region when it is observed. The fourth event that we have witnessed in history is the 1798 events, when the papacy lost her first supremacy at the end of Napoleon, when General Berthier took the Pope away from Rome and brought him as a prisoner into France. Now, some people disagree that it's General Berthier. They say that it's actually the government at the time, that the Directorate, they were calling it, that took away the Pope. Either way, it was Napoleon that was in control at the time, and he did allow his general to take the Pope prisoner, and that in history represent the wound that has been done to the beast, the government of the papacy. And the application for today is actually a parallel, but in a restoration type. So the first event was basically a parallel similar to what happened in 1755. However, the fourth event, rather than being a loss, it becomes a gain in 1929 when Mussolini restored the Vatican political statute, which, by the way, was mentioned even in the newspaper of the city of New York, and even in the United States, these things were happening, and people could see that the wound was being healed that had been inflicted in 1798. In 2016-17, we are witnessing now a kind of a restoration as well, since the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant have agreed to celebrate the 500 years of the Reformation. And this is kind of a really historical event. As we know, the Reformation was the separation of people at the time of Martin Luther in the 1500 era, 1517 era, and they separated from the Roman Catholic Church. And they were called Protestant because they protested against the Catholic Church. Now we see a reconciliation in the making. So it's definitely to be observed. The 31st of October in 2016 was the start of that celebration, and in a few weeks now from today, we will see what will come out of this so-called reconciliation. Could it be that we have a Sunday law in the making? We don't know yet, but we have to watch and pray like never before. The fifth event recorded is the 1840 Ottoman Empire, when it surrendered its independence. Josiah Litch, which was part of the Millerite movement at the time, predicted the date of when the Ottoman Empire would surrender its independence. He did not predict the fall of the Ottoman Empire. If you read history carefully, you will see that Josiah Litch predicted at the time that the Ottoman Empire, which had existed since 1299 AD, now in 1840, it was very decadent, and it was needing of support from the countries of Europe, which at times they had fought and actually won over. And now they were needing of the support of those countries because they were definitely going towards a falling of the Ottoman Empire. And as the First World War reminds us of what has happened of the Ottoman Empire, because they joined in with Germany and Italy to fight against the other nation of Europe. Now, after the First World War in 1922, we see the Ottoman Empire dissolved by Turkey. But in 2014 now, ISIS has set up a caliphate supported by Turkey, and we see that there is definitely some interest there. Again, the Ottoman Empire was a caliphate. The caliphate for the Islam religion is what the papacy is for the Catholic Church. So the caliphate is a very significant organization, a very significant setup, which should be watched very carefully as to where is that going to lead. The sixth event is the 1834 to 1844 movement, the 10 years representative of the 10 days between the trumpet of the fall feast to the Day of Atonement. And at the time, the first angel message was given, the message of Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. At the time, because the first angel message was refused, the second and the third could not be completed, they could not be given. Babylon is fallen, and come out of her, my people, that you may not receive of her mark. And the first angel message today, again, needs to be repeated, combined with the second and the third, added to it from Revelation 14 and 18. The latter rain, which was to be poured out at the time, has been postponed, and even another time in 1888 and further on in history. And now we are looking at the latter rain in its fullness to seal God's people so they can go out and give this message with power and vindicate his character. The seventh event is the 1844 year itself of the Great Day of Atonement in October 22nd, and the judgment of the dead which started. At the time of the Millerite, they were expecting the second coming, but after the great disappointment, the restoration of the calendar, and also the great disappointment pointing to the most holy place instead, we see today that this was definitely the judgment of the dead started, but now, under a test of the Sunday law, we are expecting the closing of the Day of Atonement with the judgment of the living. And we know that as soon as the Sunday law is declared nationally in United States, this will be the test for God's people, and this national Sunday law will continue into an international Sunday law and followed by the death decree. And this we have also to see that in the book of Daniel and Revelation. That is why this is an introduction to the book of Daniel and Revelation. And this is still to come. This is not here yet, that test of the Sunday law. The eighth event, which is the 1844 again, pointing to the October 22nd as the 10th day of the 7th month, represent the biblical calendar restored. Daniel 7:25 prophesied that the little horn, which is the papacy, which is the government to which the serpent, Lucifer, has given its power, seat, and authority. And that power, seat, and authority is represented by Sunday keeping and the power that the Roman Catholic Church has exercised for 1260 years in the past, where she basically, through the civil power, was able to impose a different calendar, which today is known as the Gregorian calendar, which is solar calendar rather than lunisolar barley harvest calendar. And this is to be restored. And this was restored actually in 1844. In 2007, the parallel of the event was a biblical calendar revived. And by the grace of God, the Grace Amadon collection was obtained, and it was demonstrated, which is the first and the only study that the church has ever done on the movement of 1844, showing and demonstrating without a shadow of a doubt that October 22nd was the 10th day of the 7th month. And coincidentally, if you may, in 2007, October 22nd was the 10th day of the 7th month for those of us who observe the feast, and the feast of Leviticus 23. And this is very precise and very clear that the biblical calendar revival of 2007 definitely reopened the way for us to study further October 22nd and prove without a shadow of a doubt that at the time of the Millerite, God himself, the Creator, restored his calendar after so many years of darkness. And notice that it's not very far from the fall of the papacy in 1798. It's only separated by 46 years. These are very important events, and those who do not want to take heed and pay attention to these events will be missing what is coming very soon upon us. The ninth event is the 1844, the sanctuary message and the most holy place that opened up, as we saw, showing that the judgment of the dead was started, and soon, today, the closing of the most holy place will occur after the test of the Sunday law is passed, the judgment of the living has been done, God's people are sealed, they have received the latter rain in great measure, and then they're ready to enter into the time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation of Daniel 12. This is in the near future. We believe that very much. The 10th event, which was the 1869 message, the help message given to God's people at the time. Although many have received it, but many also refused it. And this again called onto the rebellion of the people. This is a test. The help message will not save you. The test message of the help message is basically obey and live, disobey and die. It's a test of obedience, like all God's commandments. The same author of the 10 Commandments is the author of the help message. We are called to obey now more than ever, especially with all the sickness and diseases around us. The 11th message is the 1888 message to 1901 message to 1939 message, which were rejected. And we believe, after studying carefully those three timelines, 1888 to 1901 to 1939, that the church was in open rebellion. In 1888, which was followed with 1889, when A.T. Jones was speaking in the legislation of the United States government against Senator Blair, which was trying to bring in a Sunday law at the time. A.T. Jones was able to counteract this action because God's people were not ready. And we believe with the book of A.T. Jones, The Two Republics, published in 1891, only 3 years after the infamous Minneapolis meeting, that A.T. Jones and Wagner, and they were supported by Mrs. White at the time, it had to do definitely with the calendar. Just read The Two Republics, published in 1891, which is available online to this day, and you will see that what we're saying here is true. These people knew about the calendar. They were closer to 1844 than we are today, and they wanted to revive that calendar. They wanted to show that Christmas and New Year's and Easter's, this has to do with Rome. It had nothing to do with the calendar of God. Read the book. It's a large book. It's over 500 pages, and it all shows what Rome has done with God's calendar. That's what the Two Republics is all about. And it finishes with the fact that United States of America, so Rome and United States are mentioned in this book, and it does mention that United States will repeat the same thing as Rome, imposing their rules, their calendars, by using a law, which we call the Sunday law, and this will be imposed throughout all the world when Rome, combined with the Roman Catholic Church, combined with Protestantism and spiritualism, unite together. And this is basically what we see today. So as the message was rejected at those time, today the people reject the truth. And we're hearing right now the trumpets. And the thunders are supposed to be earthquake and lightning, and they're giving events in the book of Revelation that are unfolding before our very eyes. Then the plagues will follow. The 12th event has to do with war and rumor of wars. In 1914-1918, for the first time ever in history, a world war was unfolding before the eyes of the people. World war because many nations for the first time got together, from Turkey to Germany to Italy to France to United States. Even Russia got involved, and the UK, which was Great Britain at the time. Study our study that we're presenting on the chart and the PowerPoint videos of Daniel and Revelation. You've got to know those things before it's too late. 1939, 1945, we see World War II. which is another great war in the history of this world, and again involving many, many nations. Pretty well the same kind of axis and allies, except for the Ottoman Empire, which by then had fallen. We're looking now at today with the wars and the rumor of wars since 1945, and you can calculate them yourself. We have them actually on the study of the book of Daniel, where we calculated over 280 wars have taken place since 1945. And this, you can check that out online. Will there be a World War III? This is our question. Like the Millerites of old, you can now have the charts of Daniel and Revelation with an historical and present-day application as prepared in 2017. Simply request a format ready to print at 24 inches by 36 inches size or 36 inches by 48 inches. They make beautiful charts, and with a glossy paper, it's very high quality and it looks beautiful. Simply request it at numbers1317@gmail.com. And these charts were specially designed to accompany the Daniel and Revelation studies, which can be viewed and downloaded on these links below on YouTube. In Luke chapter 21, verse 26, we read, "Men's heart failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken." We invite you now to follow through with the study on Daniel and Revelation on YouTube, as we give you the first link for the study on Daniel and the first link on the study of Revelation. You are also invited to follow through on www.numbers1317.org for an extended study on the sanctuary, the help message, and prophecy, and much more. Feel free to contact us at numbers1317@gmail.com.